Evening, everyone. I'm Michael, one of the volunteers here. Welcome to this evening's practice. Anyone here for the first time? Fantastic. Glad y'all decided to come out tonight. Before we get started, we have a few announcements. If you haven't already, please remember to silence your cell phones and put them away so you can be fully present for the talk and the meditation. If you must use your phone, please step outside and do so in the lobby. We invite you to join us for our weekly Tuesday evening events with Medicine Buddha practice at 6 p.m. and our public talk at 7 p.m. Next week for our Tuesday evening talk, Geshe Phende will continue speaking on the 37 practices of a bodhisattva. Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m., the Drepung Loseling monks conduct evening prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama's long life and other teachers. On Thursdays at 4:30 p.m., the Drepung Loseling monks conduct the Protector Puja for smooth journeys, successive interviews, medical treatments, new business, etc. Our popular 5-class foundation series continues April 11th with the 4 immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. This one-day retreat via Zoom focuses on the 4 immeasurables, which are cultivated to extend towards sentient beings with a mind free of bias. This series is a prereq for the intermediate series and for other retreats. We're thrilled to announce the upcoming book release of Engaged Compassion by our founder and spiritual director, Geshe Lobsang Tenzin Negi, Ph.D., releasing May 12, 2026. On Sunday, May 17th, Geshe will lead our 11 a.m. meditation and host a book signing afterwards. Pre-orders are available now through all major booksellers. Pre-ordering is a wonderful way to support the launch of this meaningful work. More info is in the lobby. As a reminder, on the weekends especially, please do not park on the grass along the driveway behind the building. The lot's full. Overflow parking can be found around the corner and up the street at the school, the John Lewis Elementary School on Skyland Drive. Access to the parking lot via Skyland Drive, and then walk down the hill to get to the center. Information on all the events can be found in the lobby and on our website at drepung.org, because sometimes I tend to read this quickly. If anyone is interested in volunteering, you can see any one of us with a name tag. There's a donation box near the entrance to this room. Your generous support helps us to continue to offer programs and services like this to our Atlanta community and to those around the world through our online platforms. Now, if you would please stand as we welcome our teacher in for this evening's talk.
Okay, now first we're going to recite the mantra of the Heart Sutra. And during this recitation, the mantra, it is good to meditate on emptiness. Tayata gati gati paragati parasam gati bodhisoha tayata gati gati paragati parasamgati bodhisoha tayata gati gati paragati parasangati 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 bodhisoha. Now next is the four immeasurables. May all beings have happiness. May they be free from suffering. May they find the joy that has never known suffering. May they be free from attachments and hatred. May all beings have happiness. May they be free from suffering. May they find the joy that has never known suffering. May they be free from attachments and hatred. May all beings have happiness. May they be free from suffering. May they find the joy that has never known suffering. May they be free from attachments and hatred. Next mandala offering. Oi soi shi pi ji choi shi ai me ai to tama ai ri ai ra va lin shi ni ai de ai ji pa ti Sanje Shinto Mi Te Bi Waye Doi Kye Nama Dai Shin La Che Pa Sho Yidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. So today we are in 7, 8, right? 8 stanza or 8 practice. So now we finished the 7 preliminary practice. Now number 8 is the actual Lam Rim practice. Lam Rim, which means the stages of the path to enlightenment. So this number 8 is now we start the actual real practice. So it is a little bit different than the traditionally the Lam Rim. Number of you know the Lam Rim practice. A little bit different way here. But main practice are the same. So here, why it's called the actual practice, this practice number 8. It's called in Tibetan language. Shinto soke nyeson to ngenam, digbe leki tibur tube song, teacher sola bakyang, digbe le, namya michi kese laglenyes. The subduer said, all the unbearable sufferings of bad rebirths is the fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the course of your life, never do wrong. This is the practice of the bodhisattvas. So, the subduers, subduer, which is the Buddha, the Buddha Shakyamuni, Gautam Buddha. So, subduer, the Buddha, what he say? All the unbearable sufferings, right? Unbearable pains and suffering, specific of the bad rebirths. So the bad rebirths, which are general, among the 3, what you call the 6 realms, in the Buddhist belief, 6 realms, right? In samsara, there are 6 realms. So 3 realms which call higher realms, good realms. 3 realms which call lower realms, unfortunate realms, bad realms. So that's why here saying bad rebirths. So these 3 realms, which are hell realm, hungry ghost realms, and animal realms, right? These are the 3 unfortunate realms. 3 good realms, which are human, right? Human realms, demigod, and the god realms, right? These are the called 3 higher realms. So altogether, there are 6 realms. So unbearable suffering of bad rebirths. So unbearable pains and suffering of hell realms, hungry ghosts, the animal sufferings, right? These are the fruit of wrongdoing. So these suffering causes by whom, right? Why they have these suffering? So these are the fruit of wrongdoing, which called the bad karma. Wrongdoing is the wrong karma, right? Non-virtuous karma, right? Action. Wrong virtues, non-virtuous actions. So that's why it's the fruit of wrongdoing, bad karmas. Therefore, through understanding on that, therefore, even at the course of your life, never do wrong. Even at the course of your life, even your life, you're losing your life, but never act wrong action. Never accumulate negative karma, right? So because the negative karmas or non-virtuous karmas are the causes of suffering of 3 lower realms. So therefore, you should always be avoid these non-virtuous karmas. Right? This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So all the bodhisattvas are never ever, right, act wrong action. They're always avoiding. They always hesitate, to act these wrong non-virtuous actions. So now this is why, here we put it like actual practice, right? Is actually in the Lam Rim tradition, practitioner, there are three categories. The beginner, which is called small scope practitioner, right? The beginner. Then medium scope practitioner. Then the great scope, right? There are three, divide into three: small scopes, medium scopes, and great scopes practice. The small scope, this is the first started the practice of the small scope, a small capacity, the practitioner, the beginners. The main point is when Buddha first, when he introduced his idea or the Buddha Dharma, right? First he taught Four Noble Truths, right? Four Noble Truths. That's the kind of the fundamental Buddhist concept. This is the Buddhist concept. As a Buddhist or practitioner, it's very important to understand this Four Noble Truths. This is the main concept of all the idea Buddhist practice is through this philosophy, Four Noble Truths. He introduced first truth of suffering, right? All the different types of the suffering. Among these, one of the most important suffering which we need to understand is called the suffering of conditioning, the third suffering. Suffering of change, suffering of conditioning, right? There are three different types of the suffering. Suffering of conditioning, sometimes they use suffering of pervasive conditioning. So this suffering is quite difficult to understand as a suffering. That is why it is very important to understand that. If you understand suffering of conditioning as a suffering, then you may understand what is the main point, what is the main point of the Dharma, or what is the main point of Buddhist practice, where you need to apply, you understand that. So that is why suffering of conditioning as a suffering is very important. So suffering of conditioning or suffering of pervasive conditioning, what that really means, right? It means your five aggregates, right? Your five aggregates are the contaminated. Five aggregates, which means your body, your feeling, right? Your, which call one part of the mind called discrimination, mental factors, sometimes they use mental formation, and then consciousness, right? These are the five. One is the body. Rest of these four are part of your mind. Four are part of your mind. Mainly your mind and your body. Right? These are the two, what you call aggregates. Within the mind, they put four different aspects. One, they take it out, one aspect of your mental factor called feeling, right? They put separately. One aspect of your mind called discrimination, they put separate name there. Then rest of all your mental factors, right, you have, use one word. It's called mental formation, right? Then you have six main minds. eye, ears, nose, tongue, body, mental consciousness, right? 6 of them put one name called consciousness. So these are the 4, right? The part of the mind called aggregates. So altogether, 5 aggregates, right? Body, feeling, discrimination, mental formation, consciousness. So these are the 5. So right now, our body and rest of all these 4 aggregates, the mental part of the 4 aggregates, all of them are contaminated, right? It's not pure, it's contaminated. One easiest thing is you can see our body, right? This body is not pure. It's the meat body, right? It's dirty. It is contaminated. Because of having this body, we experience suffering of aging, suffering of sickness, suffering of death and dying, right? All of these 3 sufferings looks inevitable. Everybody will suffer, right? Because of our body is contaminated. It's impure, it's dirty. That's why day by day, second by millisecond, this body is getting older, right? Suffering of aging. Everybody will experience. As long as when you have this body, if you live with this contaminated body, you will experience suffering of aging, suffering of illness. Then finally, suffering of death. Right? We have to die. There's no way to hide it, these things. So all of this, because of the body itself, is contaminated, right? Then our mind, it's also contaminated. And our mind is also not pure. It's contaminated mind. So that we have these 5 aggregates, put it into simple 2 aggregates, body and mind. Since we're born, right? What we have our body, we have our mind. Both of them are contaminated. It's impure. So that contaminated aggregates is called suffering of conditioning, suffering of pervasive conditioning. When we say we are circle in samsara, right? The word, Sanskrit word samsara. Samsara means suffering of cycle existence, right? Suffering of cycle existence, mundane. So samsara mainly means these contaminated aggregates. So we are circle in this samsara, means these contaminated aggregates. We can born animals or God realms, or human, changing. The realm is changing, but all of these realms, their body and their minds are still contaminated. All of them are. That's why it's called circle in samsara, right? It's same contaminated aggregates. So living in samsara, then suffering of change, all of these suffering, no doubt, we will experience this suffering. So that's why he introduced suffering is easy. Even animals knows, right? Suffering of sickness, suffering of stress, depression, anxiety, just worldly people are talking about these suffering, because suffering. We don't need to use our human intelligence to investigate. Everybody knows, even animals knows. Suffering of change is a little bit difficult. Majority today in the world, they're not seeing suffering of change as a suffering. For them, suffering of change is the happiness. But from the Buddhist perspective, these are still part of suffering. So what are the suffering of change? Suffering of change is mundane pleasure, which we call samsara pleasure. Samsara pleasures are the suffering of change, which, simple example, You don't have job, first you suffer. You find the job, you are very happy, right? You may celebrate. I find the job. You are enjoying doing party because you found the job. And eventually, because of that job, you stress, you depress, you suffer. So that job, first when you found it, you're very happy. Eventually, slowly, it's turned into suffering. Because of that job, you suffer, right? When you first marry, big celebration, right? You inviting it, very big celebration. After, because of your husband, you suffer. Because of your wife, you suffer. Let's go that way, right? Then first, when you found it out, your pregnancy, oh, you are crying, you are very happy, right? Oh, I'm pregnant now, I have a baby. Then baby born, you are very exciting, very happy. Then slowly, because of your child, you suffer, right? It goes this way. So that's called suffering of change. So suffering of change, which means first when they got it, looks happiness. Eventually when you live with that, when you hold it, keep it, then it's no longer happiness. It slowly turns into sufferings. Right? That's called suffering of change. These things you need to little bit understand. You have to have experience. You have to use your intelligence. Just look that way, you don't see these other suffering, right? So that is why most of our suffering we create it. Because we don't know this will become suffer. We are the one exciting to make it. Then after we suffer, because of them, we suffer these things. So most of these problems, because of not understanding suffering of change as a suffering, that mistake, you put your life complicated, right? So that's why it is first important to understanding all these suffering. Right? Then most difficult, I mentioned suffering of pervasive conditioning. Most difficult, this suffering I mentioned earlier. So now, question is, this suffering of pervasive condition, suffering of conditioning is the basic, is the ground of rest of all this suffering. Suffering of change, suffering of suffering, come from suffering of conditioning. Is the, these aggregates. Right, born into the samsara. You're born into samsara, that is why suffering of change, suffering of suffering, all these problems, right? Because you're born into samsara. So that's showing suffering of condition is the ground, base, of rest of all this suffering. So suffering of conditioning come from where? What is the causes of suffering of conditioning, right? That's why Buddha introduced second noble truth, truth of origin of suffering. When he introduced what is the causes of this suffering, origin of suffering, he put two causes. One is called the karma, right? Karma is the one of the causes. Another one is called mental afflictions, right? Your negative emotion, mental afflictions. These are the two main causes of all these sufferings, right? Now, as a student, as a practitioner, now you have to use your own wisdom, intelligence, investigate. Yourself need to understand these sufferings are caused by my karma and my mental affliction. If you don't know that, if you're still not understanding your karma and your mental afflictions are the causes of all your suffering, if you do not know that, your practice on Buddha Dharma will never become success, never become what you call success. Because practicing Buddha Dharma, Buddha's teaching, Buddhism, is mainly for sake of overcome suffering, right? That's our purpose. In purpose of adopting this religion is for freedom of suffering. So this is the case. Suffering is the result. So if you don't change the causes, a result never change. You cut it, next day it will come back again. You cut it, next day it will come, right? You have a poison tree in your yard, you cut that tree. If you don't take out the root causes, live there, after next time it can come again. Then you have to cut it, it can come again and again. It's never ended. So from the Buddhist perspective, to deal with the problem is, if you don't like this problem, you need to find what is the causes of that problem. Fully understanding that causes, then change the causes. Take out the cause. If you change the causes, then result never come. Never ever comes. Right? That's so. These Four Noble Truths where Buddha taught, it's what he teach is called the philosophy, Buddhist view. There are two views. One is called mundane right view. Another is called supramundane right view. So first Buddha taught mundane right view. What is that? It's called law of causality. Now that's the mundane right view, law of causality. So that this law of causality is not somebody create it, somebody make it. It's not about that. It means this is how it is. That's called nature. Nobody created. This is the nature. So the nature we cannot change. That's why it's called nature, right? We need to understand how it's functioning, how it's work, then we need to deal. So the reality, cause and effect, all the results are coming from origin from the causes, right? So result, the effect and the cause, the relationship between these two relationship, it's called the law of causality. It's a very, very important philosophy. We need to study, need to understand that philosophy. So when you really understand cause and effect relationship is very interesting. You learn from external things. First, if you want to have apple, grow an apple in your yard, right? You need to plant the apple seed, right? Without apple seed, it never grow apple tree there. So that's, we understand, human beings are understanding, right? Animals, most of animals still not understand these things, right? So that's why the farmers, if they want to have rice, they plant the rice. If they want to have corn, they plant the corns, right? If they want to have potatoes, they plant the potatoes. So that relationship between this type of the causes bring this type of the result. That kind of unique relationship. This apple seed never ever brings banana or orange, right? It only brings apple. So that unique relationship between cause and effect, this type of cause only brings this type of result, not all the result. Certain cause bring only certain result, nothing else. Now question, why not? Why not apple seed bring the bananas? Right? We don't know. Why not? We don't know. That's the nature. So that's what called the natures. Right? So that type of relationship, we learn first. This is all how this world functioning. So you learn that. Then your goal is to overcome your suffering. So you are looking, this suffering coming from where? Right? They need to have certain type of the causes condition. So every result, they have a causes. any results when they have fruits, they always have some causes. Without causes, there's no result, anything's. Right? Without causes, no result. So that's called the law of causality. Every results are dependent on causes. Not only that, the result who depend on causes have certain type of relationship. Only certain causes bring certain result. Not any causes can bring any result. Right? That's another relationships. So these things, when you learn that, now there's certain type of the causes which we don't see from our eye sense consciousness. It's not tangible, it's not visible. So invisible many things we have, where they are coming from. What are the causes of this? Right? So Buddha himself thoroughly investigating, then he found the suffering. Mainly when we say suffer, is the mental experience, right? Mental pain. Your sense consciousness, your mental consciousness, right? Suffering. Sense consciousness suffering, mental consciousness. So these suffering, what are the causes? They're external conditions. Somebody beats you. That's the external condition, right? So there are internal causes, conditions there. So these are when they look furthermore, then Buddhists use the word called karma, rather karma. It's not only unique Buddhist philosophy, even non-Buddhist ancient Hindus, Hindus also believing on certain karmas. They also have that. So karma means actions, right? So our actions are the causes of our sufferings. So now there are many questions which we have. When you study the karma, it's a very difficult kind of the philosophy actually. Sometimes Buddhists say, oh, everything karma looks like easy. But when you really investigate, this is a really difficult subject. When the karma comes, it always comes mind. It's very much relative with the mind. Because the karma, the actions are, when you act it through your body, speech, and mind, whatever you act it, they leave the imprints in your mind streams. In the mind streams, sometimes they use the word called storehouse consciousness, storing these imprints, the karma, keeping that. When external condition arises, and this karma ripen. When this karma ripen, result, this mind, right, feel the pain or happiness, whatever karma, right, it's ripened that way. So therefore, in order to understand the karma thoroughly, what you call detail, we need to understand the mind and consciousness. What's meant by mind? That's also difficult, right? It is difficult because we all talk about the mind. General, everybody talking mind, right? But when you really ask, what is the mind? What is the consciousness? It's really tricky. It's really difficult to understand that what you call phenomena called the mind. Today maybe modern educations have lots of information about that. I'm not sure that commonly all the modern education, commonly do they have same definition of the mind? Commonly, I'm not sure. But in the Buddhist, what's the definition of consciousness or the mind, which means we call merely luminous and knowing, right? merely luminous and knowing is the definition of consciousness, mind. That's the commonly, according to Buddhist psychologists. So merely luminous means mere luminous. So luminous means clear. The clear, which has different meanings. One part of the clear luminous means consciousness or the mind do not have form. It's formless phenomena, right? It's invisible, formless, like an energy. That's why it's called luminous or clear. Another definition, another meaning refers to luminous, which means the mind is like a mirror. It reflects all the image and reflect to the mind, to the consciousness. That's why called luminous, clear. It's reflected there, reflection to the mind. Then knowing means what they function, the mind. Mind is functioning as a knowing, experiencing, right? Experiencing, knowing. That's the function. So that's why definition of the mind is merely luminous and knowing. So this subject, the mind, because of being luminous, invisible, right? It's just like an energy. How much strong fire you burn, you cannot burn your mind, right? You cannot chop your mind. You cannot cut your mind. Doesn't matter how sharp sword you use it. So that phenomenon, mind, where is gone after when we die? Where is going now? Right? Because body, we can see, we can burn it, we can see it's gone. But this mind, you cannot burn it, you cannot chop it, you cannot destroy it. Where is it? Right? So in the Buddhists, mind and consciousness never ended. It constantly remain. Mental continuums never ended. So where they're coming from? Beginningless. There's no beginning. Beginningless, it will travel, never ended. That kind of phenomena called the mind. So karma, the actions are storing in your mind. Mind is the one who keeping that imprints of the karma. Imprints are holding that, storing in the mind. So when the mind travels, these imprints, these karmas are always with the mind. So the karma is the action after you act it. It remains as a imprints, potential, right? Tendency. It's remained like that way. And it's storing in your mind, right? So mind travel, it goes with that. So therefore now, this mind, body is like a house, right? Body is like a house who hosts our mind, right? Mind hosted by body. So when your mind is separated from this body, somehow this body getting old cannot host your mind. They have no energy to host it. So your mind have to leave. So when the mind leaves, we call it's death. That's how the death. Simple, right? So when they leave, mind have to stay in another house, somebody who need to host them. So that mind leave from this body, they're connecting to the new body. That's called reincarnation, rebirth, right? So that next body, who make decision? What kind of body this mind will be connected, right? That part is more difficult part now. Buddhists believe this mind traveling with all these karmas within the mind, right? The karmas, the actions are the one who taking your mind. Your karma, if you have a good karma, ripen, ripen, good karmas ripen, your mind automatically connecting to the good house, right? Good body. That's called higher rebirths. If that mind is polluted by bad karmas become more power, dominate your mind, and that bad karma will take your mind to the bad karma, will connect it to the bad body, lower realms, right? So two realms, good realms and bad realms within the samsara, because of the karma we accumulated, good and bad karmas too. That's why the result too, good realms and bad realms, right? So now good karma also very good, medium and light good karma, right? You can go three categories. Similarly bad, very bad, heavy karma, bad medium, bad light karma. Three different categories. Because of these three different categories, good life, higher rebirth has a three higher rebirths. Same the lower realms have a three lower realms. Hell realm, hungry ghosts, animals, right? That's why the causes, whatever the causes you have, results come that way. All these results, because of the causes, the karma has this kind of variety. Types of the karma, that's why the result, variety, three, altogether 6 different realms, because 6 different types of the karma. 3 good karma, 3 bad karmas, right? That's how. So this body, like born into human realms, which means our consciousness is connected to the human aggregates, right? Mainly human body, human aggregates. So when the consciousness connects to the human aggregates, we say, I born into human beings. These human aggregates this rebirth is compared with the animals and like that, it's much better. Human beings more intelligent. You can do more things, right? Compared with the animals. That is why this is, because the causes of this body is good karma, much better than animals' karmas. That's why human has a better realms, right? So it's all coming from good karma and bad karma through understanding of suffering of animals and all these realms. So through understanding of these suffering, so if you do not want to born into this suffering, you need to avoid the causes of these suffering, which are negative karmas, bad karmas. These are the causes. I mentioned earlier, right? From the Buddhist way of dealing the problem is always first change the cause. If you don't change the causes, result always you will be experienced. That's why. So therefore here he's saying is, the subduer, the Buddha said, all the unbearable suffering of bad rebirths is the fruit of wrongdoing, bad karma. Therefore, even at the course of your life, never do, right, wrong karma. Never accumulate negative karmas. That's why, right? So through understanding on suffering of 3 lower realms, you should avoid the non-virtuous karmas. So now, I mentioned earlier, suffering, samsara, main causes, karma, and the negative emotion. There are 2 things, right? Among these 2, negative emotions are more difficult to change that. Karma, a little bit easier to purify. Negative emotion, very difficult. You need to understand the emptiness philosophy, right? Dependent origination. All this, anger, attachment, jealousy, arrogance, selfish, where these emotions coming from? What are the fundamental causes? That mind of ego grasping, mind of self grasping. So mind of self-grasping, what is that mind? What is functioning? What kind of misperception? All this detail, lots of information, right? That's why Buddhist philosophy help us to understand each of these negative emotion which we have is something misperception, not only negative bad, but these are part of wrong consciousness, misunderstanding, wrong understanding. So how should we know? Through understanding the philosophy. Philosophy help us to understand what is the truth, right? That's why we study the philosophy. Like for instance, this is a flower, or flower is there. That's we see. Flower is permanent. They are same flower I saw when I sit there. Right now, these are the same flower. That's we see. But the reality, it is not. It is impermanence, right? Just before 1 hour, you saw this flower. After 1 hour, its flowers completely change. It's second by second is changing. It's impermanence. But we don't see these are impermanence. For us, it's like the same thing. That's why we have a misperception, permanent grasping, and that permanent grasping creating us attached to this flower, all kind of wrong perceptions, right? Then more deeper level, we see this flower as something solid, absolute from the object side, but the reality, it is not. It is empty of inherent existence. Right? It's not exist inherently. It exists, yes, it is exists, but it is not exist inherently, intrinsically, independently. It exists, it's relatively, dependently, right? Interconnected, interdependence. You cannot find from the objects that when you investigate all of this truth, reality, only through philosophy. So that's why we study philosophy, is to understanding what is the truth, right? So therefore, in order to overcome mental affliction, you need to understand these philosophy. It's more tough. So therefore, first deal with the karma things. That's why the small scope. Our goal is to overcome suffering. So causes of suffering, karma, mental afflictions. Two things there. So first, we should deal the karma, to change this karma. First, to study the philosophy I mentioned earlier, law of causality, mundane right view, not the super mundane right view. That's more complicated. First, mundane right view, which is law of causality, law of karma. These philosophy understand how karma's reaction, karma's result, what's also the karma which is very much relative with the mind, how it works, these things, all this information you learn. Then what you're doing is first urgent things, to completely eliminate your mental affliction in the one life looks like impossible, right? It's take many lives. One life just eliminate all the mental affliction, it's very, very difficult, right? It is possible, yes, it is possible, but very difficult. Majority people, it take many lives to deal with these mental afflictions. So what we need to do, we need to plan for at least that many lives will take it, but in order to go this next life, all this life we are born have to born into higher rebirths. Otherwise, if you fall down into animal realms, then you cannot learn Buddha Dharma, right? You cannot practice, you cannot meditate, you cannot, deal or antidote to your mental affliction. It's impossible. Born in animal, how can you deal with your anger, attachment, all these things? How can you learn this philosophy? It's impossible. So therefore, I need to born into higher rebirths So you plan that. So in order to born into higher rebirth, what are the causes of lower rebirth? How should I avoid it? That's why non-virtuous actions. Non-virtuous karmas are the fundamental causes of lower realms, lower rim sufferings. So if you avoid it, you clean this non-virtuous karma. If you do not have causes of non-virtuous, causes of suffering of three lower rims, then you don't need to worry. You're not going to born there. I mentioned earlier, it's law of causality. If causes is not there, result not there, right? So that kind of relationship, you learned it philosophy, then you put effort. I really need to stop these non-virtuous karmas, right? Then non-virtuous karma, general, there are many. But Buddha, when he put it very simple way, 10 non-virtuous karma he introduced us. This is the first practice for the Buddhists. First when you take refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, right? After you take refuge, your lifestyle, your commitment, main thing is avoiding these non-virtuous, 10 non-virtuous actions. 10 non-virtuous actions, which are 3 from your body, 4 from your speech, and 3 from your mind. These 10 non-virtuous actions, you need to understand. First, always to avoid this. So 3 from your body, which are killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, right? These are the 3. Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Killing, stealing, even killing any beings, little animals or little fly, anything, right? It's part of the killing. When you take others' life, doesn't matter, human, animals, any little creatures, doesn't matter. You take others' life, it's killing. You kill this. So that's the non-virtuous actions, right? So stealing, same. Stealing means things not belongs to you, you take it. That's the stealing, right? According to the Vinaya, they have a kind of the debates. So for instance, if you have to pay the tax, if you not pay the tax, this is part of stealing. These portions of money you're supposed to be paid, if you not paid, this is stealing. So it not belongs to you. It belongs to either government, either other beings, whoever. Things not belongs to you, you take it, then it's called stealings, right? So then sexual misconduct. Mainly there are lots of information about that. The main sexual misconduct means as a husband, if you have physical sexual relationship with another wife, that's called sexual misconduct. As a wife, have relationship with another husband, that's called a sexual misconduct. So these are the 3 which call the negative karma, non-virtuous karma through your body, right? Through your speech, using harsh word, telling lie, gossip, slander. Slander means divisive words, right? So the lying, it's easy to understand. Using harsh word, is right. That's also quite easy to understand. And gossiping. Gossiping is you chatting, meaningless, out of jealousy, out of negative thoughts, you chatting. There's one person who made some type of the dress, and you made jealous. Then you say, oh, blah, 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 behind there, blah, 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 right? So that's gossiping is, compared with the harsh word and lie, is not that bad. But according to the text, gossip is the more danger, because gossip is the mostly we're gossiping. As soon as when you're gathering, we gossip. Either we say blah, blah, this, there's government, and this guy, that guy. Yeah, just we talk meaningless behind them. So all of these are called the negative speech. So it's non-virtuous action. Then divisive word, slander, you go to the between two person, as maybe family, you talk to the husband, talking about, oh, his wife, blah, blah, blah. Then you go to the wife's side, telling your husband, blah, blah, blah. Eventually make husband and wife split it up. That's called divisive, right? In the society, as a teacher and student, you go to the teacher, say, oh, your student, blah, blah, blah. Then you go to the student and say, your teacher is blah, blah, blah. Then teacher and student split it up, right? This is called slander. Then groups, one group and two groups, then you go between these two, you split these two groups. These all are called the slander. Actually, these are very, very heavy karma, and a very heavy karma, usually very dangerous. So these are called 4 negative actions through your speech. Then through your mind, harmfulness, which is kind of similar like anger, covetousness, which is like attachment, and ignorance, right? So these are the 3 from your mind. So these are the called 10 non-virtuous karma, which are the main causes of suffering of 3 lower realms, right? Now that's Buddha introduced that. So as a practitioner, specific as a Buddhist, when you really thinking about your next life, at least to avoiding to born into these 3 lower realms, then you need to avoid this non-virtuous action, this 10 non-virtuous action. You have to stop these actions, right? So these kind of practice, you understand. That's why I'm saying, as a practitioner, philosophy is very, very important to understand the philosophy. So when you're understanding law of causality, law of karma, that philosophy, that knowledge gives you what you call the self-discipline. We call moral ethics, self-discipline. It's not disciplined by somebody else. I'm not allowed to steal because there's a CC camera or something there. Not good. That's you disciplining because of you scared to them. Right? Here, moral ethics, which self-discipline, through understanding the disadvantages of each of these wrong action you acted, result will this. Through understanding all that, self, not doing this, not doing. You make your own discipline, right? Self-discipline. That's called moral ethics, right? Moral ethical life. So therefore, as a Buddhist, first our moral ethics practice is avoiding 10 non-virtuous action in your daily life. Even, you losing your life here, Buddha says, right? Even at the course of your life, never do this wrong action. That kind of commitments, it's not somebody punish. These commitments come from your knowledge of understanding the law of causality, law of karma, how the causes, what kind of results come. If you know this, somebody put the poison in the tea, if you know in this tea has poison, right? Somebody, even they give you $1 million, you will not going to drink this tea, right? Because you're going to lose your life. There's not why you know the disadvantages of this tea will take you to losing your life. Then what's the point to have $1 million, right? That kind of knowledge, when you're understanding the karma and the result, that relationship, that philosophy you understand, that gives you moral ethical life, self-disciplined. Never act these non-virtues. Means your life become very honest person. Never lie, right? Never use harsh word. Write lovely word, Right? When they talk about eightfold path, right action, right speech, right livelihood, that kind of life. So this life becoming very peaceful, confidence, happy life. Not only that, the people who lives with you, they also can feel that kind of pleasure. Living with a very moral, ethical life, actually it is saying, it gives you inner strength, inner power. So your inner power will brings to the people, trust you, not by force, right? Trust, relationship, respect, that's called the power, right? This comes from where? Because of being very honest person, live with a very moral, ethical lives, right? So these are the advantages of remain, what you call honest life, ethical life. So then next life, of course, more beneficial, right? Born into higher rebirth. So next life, what life is based on your action. It's not based on what you believe, what you do, or what you call, what religions you are. Like even as a monk, right? You've been a monk for all your life. But during your monk's life, you're lying, you're stealing, all kind of non-virtuous action, you do it, then your next life is, of course, unfortunate realms, animals or hell realm or hungry ghosts, right? No, it doesn't matter. I believe Buddha, I be monk, doesn't matter. The result is your action. What you acted, that result is not what you believe, where you belongs to. It's nothing there. That's called law of causality. It's a very honest way. That's how it is, right? Religion, people make it. Law of causality is that's how it is, right? Your faith or this or that, that's the human made it. Whatever you make it, the idea you make it through understanding how it's functioning, through understanding on reality, you make it. It's good way. If you go against the reality, then your faith will put you into more difficult life because it's against the reality. The reality, nobody can change it. That's how we call reality. So from the Buddhist perspective, Buddha himself first learned what is the reality, how it's functioning, study, investigate, research. Based on that reality, then he makes his idea, right? Brings the idea to avoid this. Because if you want to live very happy, you want to avoid your suffering, then based on this reality, then he applied the philosophy, what you call the idea of avoiding these other causes. But you cannot do bad karma can create you the good rebirth. Cannot. Buddha cannot do it, anything. Karma, the power of karma, nobody can change. Even Buddha cannot change it. That's the reality. If he has the power to change those bad karma, today he can change all the bad karma. Everybody live with a very happy life. No need to do too much work. He can do whatever miracle, blessing or something, change the karma. But it is not. Nobody can do this. This is how it is. This individual, you create it, you have to fix it. Nothing else. Right? You make this mistake, you have to fix it. Nobody will fix for you. That's how the reality. So therefore, through understanding on this philosophy, so sometimes people think, I've been very honest, being honest, we have so much disadvantages. People are lying, they become very rich, they become very famous. We are not lying, we are blah, blah, this. That means you don't understanding. The result is not this life. The result is much later, much worse. When they talk about the karma, there's one part of things called magnification karma. Magnification karma. What that means? One little karma is the causes, right? result, huge big result. Whole life suffer. Just 1 minute of karma has potential to create whole life of the suffering. They use the example. Some people think, oh, that's how, right? We can think how it's created. They use example, like one little peach seed, you put it, right? You plant it. That peach seed has thousands of the peach, right? He can create it as a potential to bring thousands of peaches, right? You plant that peach seeds, it brings peach tree. That whole big tree comes from that little seed. And every year, the thousands of peaches there. So source come from where? That little seed. So that little seed has power, potential to create these thousands and thousands of peaches every years. That's called the magnification karma. Means one little causes has potential to create eons of life of suffering. So therefore, one little karma, maybe in that moment you lie, you may get $1 million, right? But this is you lying, you get this dollar, but that karma of lying waiting there, it's plant the seed in your consciousness, in your mind. When the circumstances arises, depend on the condition. When the condition arises, it's ripen. When they ripen, suffering is too much now, too long, too deep, too heavy, right? That's how understanding on these things doesn't matter. When they become very rich, let them rich. I don't want to suffer for eons and eons of life. Therefore, not acting, I got more beneficial. Benefit is not in this life only. There are many lives which we are talking about. So when you're understanding the law of karma, it makes you so honest. And the people, whatever they're doing some, living in samsara, people more lying, more doing, looks like more successful their life, But these are just temporary there. But these are not the real. The real comes later. When it comes, it's too much, too long there. So that's why Buddha, he says, therefore, even the course of your life, never do this bad karma. Never, that kind of commitments. Even Buddha say, it's difficult, right? As a people, very difficult. Why? We're still not understanding that philosophy, the law of causality, dependent origination, dependent on causes condition. That relationship still not yet fully understanding. So that philosophy, when you really understand, full understand, then that helps to your follow this karma, right? So therefore, small scope practitioners, learning of philosophy, dependent origination in terms of mundane right view, dependent origination in terms of dependent on causes condition. That philosophy, through that understanding of philosophy, understanding law of karma. That is why they have strong commitments to avoiding any non-virtuous karma. Makes this life very moral, ethical, transparent life, honest life. So, next life, no hesitate. This life, full confidence, happy, peace. Next life, no hesitate even. They have 100% guarantee what they live, right? So that type of the conviction, the confidence, the small scope practice, this stanza 8, right? 8 practice. So that's how. Now last is, okay, now I know I avoided. But in the past, I do not know. I've been accumulating so much negative karmas. So what can we do that one now, right? Even in the present, I will stop it. But when I was teenage, when I was before past life, I've been accumulating many negative karmas, right? What should we do that? Then Buddha teach purification. You can purify your negative karmas. It's changeable. So how should purify your past bad karmas? He taught 4 antidote powers, right? 4 antidote powers. The first called power of reliance. Power of reliance, which means where we accumulate negative karma, we rely on other beings or we rely on 3 precious jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. For instance, from the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, like sometime we're looking down to the other's dharma, right? We, use bad words to other traditions, their teachers. And through your own ignorance, sometime, or if the person is not follow your own faith, then we say, these are bad, these are wrong. All kind of bad karma you accumulate through the religion, right? These are the one you're part of religion sometimes, or disrespect to the Buddha, disrespect to the Dharma and the Sanghas, monks and nuns, we're accusing them, all kind of things. These bad karma we accumulate through 3 precious jewels. But the most of the bad karma is others, from other sentient beings. Lying, stealing, killing, all kind of things, right from others, based on others. So that's how we accumulate it. So when you purify, you need to rely on same. So rely on 3 precious jewels. We take refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, right? Taking refuge to the 3 precious jewels, it's you are relying on 3 precious jewels. Then you're generating compassion, right? Bodhicitta, love to entire sentient beings. That's called you relying on others. You're looking for others, seeing others, you cultivate compassion, love, right? Bodhicitta. This practice, taking refuge, generating love and compassion and bodhicitta and so forth are called the power of reliance, right? Then next, usually power of reliance, what they're saying is they use example. When you fall down on this floor, you have to use that same floor to support you to stand up, right? That same, where you create a negative karma to those objects, that same object, you use it and clean them. That's why power of reliance, which means you rely on 3 precious jewels, you rely on other sentient beings, right? Through cultivate, taking refuge and generating compassion, love, and bodhicitta, and so forth. Then next is the power of regret. You have to feel tremendous regret to your bad karma you accumulate in the past. Not guilty, regret, right? I done this. Now I know through understanding this philosophy, dependent origination in terms of law of cause and effect, you learn that, so I now know my past, what I done is the mistake. So strong regrets. Regret is most important part among these 4 power. If you regret from deep of your heart, rest of the power becomes very strong. Your regret is so-so, the rest of becomes so-so. That's why stronger regret is depend on how much you understanding the philosophy, law of causality, law of karma philosophy. If you know really 100% conviction, you have very heavy regret, very strong feel regrets. I done really big mistake, right? So that's the regret. Then next, confessed. Power of confessed. What you regret, you have to confess now, apologizing, right? That part, when you confess, sometime, we're doing the prostration, sometimes you recite the mantras, meditation, any kind of spiritual action you do with confessed, right? From deep of your heart, you confessing, apologizing, and you prostration, reciting the mantras, or compassion prayers, you meditate on emptiness, and anything, any spiritual action you do with the confessed. That's the third power. Then the after last one is called the power of promise. You need to promise in the next future, I will never ever going to do that, right? So that when you have very strong regret, promise comes automatically. Never ever, even I'm losing my life, never ever going to do, because you know that heavy karma's result. If your regret is not strong enough, your promise is also, I promise, but not 100% sure, or I will break my promise. The doubts comes. So when these doubts are coming, that means your regret is still not 100% there, right? So that's how you know your powers are how strong coming from. When you're promising, you know that. When you really understanding this, then you say, I'm never ever going to do that again. You have 100% commitments. So that kind of promise, when you do it, then your negative karmas each time in cleansing. Heavy negative karmas become lighter. Your lighter negative karmas are completely cleaning. There are certain type of the karma we call definitive karmas, which means have to ripen the result. No way. So these type of the karma, through the purification, what they're going to do, if you have karma to burn, right, to burn you, so instead of real burning, you will burn in your dream. You dreamt it, you are burning, you in the 1 minute, 2 minutes, how long? Your fear, your scare, all those suffering you have. So that heavy karma, ripen into the dreams. So when that karma ripen to the dream, your karma is clean, purified. You don't need to experience real life. That your purification practice changed that. So some people, when they become good practitioner, and this life, they have lots of trouble. Business going wrong, their family have issues, so much trouble. Actually, for the practitioner, it's very good. It's these heavy karmas are now ripening into your this life. This problem, that problem, this. If they're not ripen, if they stay in the next life, it may be very long karma to burn into whole life. Instead of that, they ripen in this life. So in this life, lots of obstacles arising, this or that. These are burned, this karma. Next life, you don't need to experience this. So sometimes, as a practitioner, if you're engaging with too much trouble, many problems, you think this is very good. This is not bad luck. This is the very good luck. Your all bad karmas are ripening, into this life. So these are the one, karma, what the causes, what the reason. Then, if you want to learn each of them, killing, what kind of result? Many different results. You go then, you need to read the Lam Rim Chemo, right? This Lama Tsongkhapa's Lam Rim text, the first volumes, most of you know the stages of the path to enlightenment, has quite detail about these 10 non-virtuous action, each of them, and what is the result. There are different types of the result, not only one result. Each of them have different type of the result they have. So it helps you to understand in more detail. But mainly today here, this 8 practice is mainly through understanding on these. What you come is, your emphasis is to always be mindful, to always be aware what you're acting. And as soon as when you see you're acting something non-virtuous action, you should stop them. When the intention comes, stop. This action will create big problem in the future. If in this life maybe I get some little benefit, just for little benefit, huge problem, suffering coming, right? So compare with this huge big suffering, even there's some benefit there, I keep up. So that's how, use this logic and try to avoiding this. So therefore, this week we practice this stanza 8, right? So you should be mindful on your actions. Always try to avoid this non-virtuous action. Even you act it out of mistake, then confess with these 4 powers, right? Meditate a little bit, practice first taking refuge, mainly generating love and compassion to all beings for a few seconds, then strongly regret to this karma, mistake you've done, then you confess with, either meditate on emptiness or compassion, anything, either you do prostration, either you offering the candlelights, either you giving food to the beggars, either you taking care to those people who are sick, who have this problem, whatever good action you do, out of strong regret, and you confess, because most of the non-virtuous actions are you harming to somebody, either directly, indirectly. You harm them. That's why called non-virtuous. You're harming, right? Therefore, your action is you benefiting, right? To the people, to the poor people, whoever, releasing animals, right? Taking care of the environment, taking care of animals out of confess and do these things are the confession practice, right? Then after, okay, now, future I will not going to do that again. You should promise strongly, right? That kind of behavior, when you do it, your past karma is changing, cleaning, your future also getting much better. Eventually this practice makes you better person, at least. A better person means your behaviors become more positive, more what you call virtuous action. You become more honest person. And through that, you don't need to tell to the people. Slowly, slowly people will trust you. Your relationship will getting better. Everything's change. Right? You don't need to look for that. This life benefit. More beneficial is the next life, right? Much better life. So there's lots of benefit. Why not you doing this, right? This 10 non-virtuous action is not that much difficult to avoiding these things. Sometimes the lying thing is sometimes it's nothing to do. We just lie that. That kind of habit. Wants to go this way, you tell them, I'm going this way. Sometimes people have that kind of behavior. So these things not difficult to change. It's much easier compared with the negative emotion. That's why small scope practice, beginner, and the practice started from there. Okay, so we're going to stop here now. So finally, the last Tuesday I was thinking today I was going to leave question answer section. But somehow this karma has lots of things to talk, so cannot leave the time. So maybe the next I will try it. Right, next teaching I will try it. I usually always try to leave some question answer sections, but this one stanza has lots of information. So if you don't give all this information, it's also mixed, because next day is another things, right? This stanza is finished. So then when you give that, 1.5 hours already gone. So it's quite challenge. It's quite challenge. But I hope next I will going to leave question answer. If you have any question like a past teachings, so you can prepare that. So keep it, then next I will try it. Okay, so I will recite the Mani mantra with meditation on compassion. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om hu, Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme. And thus, honorable, compassionate gurus, we seek your blessings that all karmic debts, obstacles, and sufferings of mother beings may without exception ripen upon us right now, and that we may give our happiness and virtues to others, and thereby invest all beings in bliss. And thus, honorable, compassionate gurus, we seek your blessings that all karmic debts, obstacles, and sufferings of mother beings may without exception ripen upon us right now, and that we may give our happiness and virtues to others, and thereby invest all beings in bliss. Oi te ai nai ji ai te lai mai tu ji che ai mai ju do ve ti ai ti do nge ma lu da lai mi pa da ji ai de Geshe la da wa yi troi kuin de da de ayam bara ji ki lo troi ku de da de ayam bara ji ki lo chanjo semjo rinpoche ma ke pa nam ke chu ji ke ba nyam pa me pa yang kong ne kong tu pe wa sho. May the precious and sublime bodhicitta not yet born be born, and that which has been born not decline, but increase forever. Okay, thank you.